In my last video, I mentioned the Hikikomori, a large group of people in Japan who've been afflicted by this mental condition where they just retreat to their bedrooms and feel unable to communicate with people one-to-one and unable to engage in society. So they often spend a lot of their time online or playing computer games, and often their families have to look after them. And then you've got those who do still work, but they just avoid all social interaction wherever possible. So they're supporting themselves, but they're also insulating themselves as much as they can. And in the documentaries about this that I found, there's sometimes an attitude that these are people who basically can't handle modern life for whatever reason. So they've given up. But I wonder if these are just society's most sensitive people, and so they're the litmus test of how progress is going, and if we stay on the same track, the rest of us are next. The idea that they are sick kind of overlooks the fact that their behavior, whether it's conscious or something that's come on like a nervous breakdown, is nonetheless an honest response to a culture that is increasingly hostile to humans. In a way, I really understand why someone who's feeling this way does not see the point in interacting with other people, because where's it going to get them? What are they going to get? What they need? I don't think so. The rest of us are refusing to recognize their point. I think we're refusing to change the culture, and we're not changing our definition of what we think an acceptable life looks like. We just accept that we have to change ourselves consciously from creatures who respond emotionally and instinctively to things into creatures who suppress all that and respond in a calculating and intellectual way to everything instead. And funnily enough, even though that's basically what it takes to be an adult, so we do that unthinkingly, we detach from emotions and detach from biological rhythms, psychology still recognizes this kind of calculating algorithmic way of being, where you surrender all agency and original thought to consensus opinion in order to remain part of the group. In psychology, that's called narcissism, if it's seen in an individual. It's the construction of a false self in order to display signs that we think will appease the people around us. The Hikikomori, however, are not doing this. They're admitting, whether it's voluntarily or otherwise, that they don't see themselves being able to keep that up. What's cited as a possible cause of this phenomenon in Japan, from what I can gather from the documentary, so correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially issues with status and class. It seems that if you're not very productive economically over there, if you're not earning a good living and in a high status job, you're treated like a second-class citizen. And so the pressure is so immense to do well as a youngster that one single event, like dropping out of college or losing a job, can make a person feel they've got nowhere to go. They know it's not right to be treated badly by others because they don't have the right job, but at the same time, they know it's not right to do all the stuff necessary to get the high-status job. And this is, I think, due to the fact that Japan has been hugely rewarded for its massive economic growth and productivity from the 1950s onwards, where they basically worked themselves out of hardship to become one of the world's major economies. So it seems like that work ethic might have become a real cultural focus, If you look at the education system in Japan and Korea, it's kind of overwhelming compared to what we're expected to do in Britain and America when we're at school. And this level of stress and competition, I think for some, becomes impossible. Now, we don't have that attitude that I can see in Britain and America. You always get people who are rich flaunting their wealth, but it doesn't seem like a kind of national obsession. And yet, we're seeing the same phenomenon with people retreating entirely from society, suffering from what looks like the same condition, particularly in our major cities like London. And another sign of something that I think is similar is millennial burnout, where people go through phases of not being able to get out of bed or do simple tasks like reply to emails or collect the mail. They just feel incapacitated for days at a time. And I think what's causing it in our case is also to do with status. There's a complete lack of respect to the workforce. And it's affecting the youth because they're the ones coming into the workplace. But I mean, people who are doing the jobs that are crucial to society are just not being paid enough to be able to pay their rent. It's totally bizarre. And then to add to that, there's a growing lack of recognition for people who do important stuff but are not as visible as those in other jobs. Because in the West, I think status has been removed from vocations that are crucial, and instead it's being focused on professions that are the most visible ones. You know, the things that involve creativity, the things that make you famous. Creativity, of course, is focused on because that's the externalization of the internal world. So that's one of the more visible things you can do. I think this is because in Britain, in Scotland more specifically, we invented the television and radio and arguably the telephone. And so that's kind of our focus. You know, we want to be seen to be doing well on these media that we've taken up with a lot of enthusiasm. And youngsters are constantly fed this really bizarre idea that your usefulness is actually about how visible you are. They're not told that overtly, but that really is the message, that your goal should be to change the world. Now, how the hell would that work? You couldn't have a society that was stable if everyone in it was trying to change it. Because everyone's on the internet now, it's hard to be seen at all in real life. So you don't even get the baseline level of connection for which we've evolved. So I think people feel forced to go online and promote themselves just to get the normal feeling of being visible, the sense that you're not just a ghost, you know, inhabiting empty streets. And this is a process that will continue, so it'll be worse for the next generations than it is now. I've written about the development of technology and what I call the portal effect. I'll link to that below. But essentially each new medium is disconnecting us more from reality, and so making actual relationships of all kinds harder. And we need those. So it's taking us further and further away from having those things. Any medium by existing is its own advert, as Guy Debord said in Society of the Spectacle, because by existing it's claiming to be an improvement on reality. And if you use it, you're agreeing it does give you some kind of advantage. My generation, for example, had parents who ignored us in favour of TV screens, and such was our hunger to be in that screen ourselves so we could get that connection and respect that we saw directed at the television. We created the demand for social media so we could all be on the screen as well. And of course, the trouble is that once everybody's in that domain, even fewer people are present in reality. Now your friends aren't even present when you go out with them. They're photographing their food and they're tweeting and all that stuff. So with reality now a barren landscape with a few tin cans rolling around in the breeze, we have to get our sense of connection from impressing people in the media, one way or another. There's a lie on the internet that it's a complete democracy, a meritocracy. There's no editors now. You can self-publish anything. But where in the past you'd have a publisher saying, I'm going to promote this book, but that book doesn't get to be seen because I'm not going to promote it, so it's going to remain invisible. The thing doing that now is the algorithms. And if you upload something that the algorithm doesn't think will get loads of clicks or interactions, it's going to decide not to promote it. And your work will remain invisible. And the way algorithms choose things and work, as Douglas Rushkoff recently pointed out brilliantly, is that they adhere to the old definition of demons. They're entities which identify the weaknesses people have and exploit those for their own gain at the expense of the people. So our new editorial class is demonic, and they require us to feed on people's addictions if we want to benefit. As competition increases, the lengths that people are going to be seen are pretty frightening. I'm seeing the rising popularity of cosmetic surgery nowadays and the way everyone photoshops everything. And the kind of effort now required to get ordinary acceptance is absolutely ridiculous. It's turning youngsters into physical and mental slaves because they're totally starved of normal connection. And there's going to be a price for this. You know, some will turn to isolation or have a breakdown. Some will turn to immorality and create totally exploitative business plans. If we go along with this by blithely agreeing that, yeah, we do believe visibility on the internet is the most valuable thing, then we'll see a continuation of this snobbery. There was always a strange snobbery about certain jobs, and you know, if you've ever been a cleaner, for instance, which I was for a few years, it's not, in my opinion, it's not the cleaning that makes that job difficult, it's people's bloody attitude towards you. And you feel like saying, but if all cleaners went on strike, civilization would crumble within 24 hours, you dick. And, you know, this snobbery about anything that's physical, that's all called, these jobs are called working class jobs, and yet they're the most important ones. Anyway, that is now extending to all jobs, in my opinion, that are not seen to be creative or visible. So even the people who used to be smug, the doctors and the lawyers, I see them jacking it in to become stand-up comedians. You know, they've made their money so they can now follow their dreams. Dreams used to be things like becoming a heart surgeon or becoming a barrister or whatever, but now I can see why the visible vocations are compelling, because they really do seem like your dream, even if you're not a creative, because it's a path to connection with people and it's a path to feeling like you're really doing something meaningful. We've become conditioned to think that the more people we reach, even if the relationships are more shallow or false, the better we're doing. And so the connection you get from interacting with one of your customers or one of your clients or patients or whatever, it possibly registers as less important to us today because we're being so trained into this other way of thinking as broadcasters and as brands and businesses, and thinking of other people that way too. I hear my friends talking about dates they've gone on and saying, well, he's a lawyer, so he's doing very well for himself, but he's just a bit, he's not very creative, you know. Now, creativity a while ago was not seen as an objective measure of a person's value. It was one personality type. And of course, people are by nature creative. We spend the whole day talking, making jokes, creating recipes, decorating homes, all that stuff. But creativity now is basically the stuff that's commercially creative. It's things that you can sell. It's not, a person engaging in art for fun. It's almost that anti-art which has been algorithmically created for profit. So I find it a worrying attitude that people are increasingly adopting. And if it gets any worse, I think youngsters will have two horrible choices. They can either go into a job that's meaningful, like become a teacher or join the police force or the NHS, things that people need, and be looked down upon because they're not winning on Instagram or because they don't seem like the type who has a dream or wants to change the world. Or they can try to play the losing game of being seen in a crowded market. They can try to go into the visible industries at the expense of more and more of their natural behavior, because the competition in that field is so high. You have to work longer and longer hours for less pay or no pay. And I think a lot of young people are looking at this and just thinking, you know what, it doesn't resonate with my self-respect and self-image. The way to turn things round is probably a lot simpler than it seems, because it's just a case of getting together in real life in 3 dimensions, if not 4. but actual dimensions, where the internet isn't going to be doing its thing, which is simply dividing and conquering. I mean, talk about manipulation. The internet has us living in completely different worlds, even when we're in the same room. And we don't talk to each other about it because the shame and guilt and negativity it makes us feel as we think everyone else's life looks better than ours on the internet. We wonder if we should be buying this product because it keeps being advertised, which makes me think maybe I should buy it because it's telling me I'm deficient. This is bullying. It's just bullying one-to-one. It's stuff we can't talk to each other about because we feel so alone and isolated. I mean, there might be another person meters away, but it's bullying that has the weight of big data behind it. The marketers know exactly what works to brainwash people into thinking they need to buy certain things. The thing that would bring us the connection and acceptance we think we need to strive for through the computer screen is closing the computer and talking to the people next to us, or if there are no people next to you, then phoning a friend and joining a therapy group, going to a pub or a cafe and striking up a conversation, although good luck with that if you're in London. That's the other problem. We've been trained to prefer the ease and autonomy of connecting superficially with high volumes of people at a remove. And different media have also trained our brains to reject the present moment. So you can't even tune in to the physical world around you, never mind people. Each successive medium has cut us off more and more from reality. Language was the first medium. It's the first mode of symbolic abstraction that represents reality and can be used to communicate messages. And that took attention away from our sensory perception. And mindfulness, that we're all striving to achieve again, is immersion in your sensory perception and the physical world around you. So language was the first thing to fracture this and disperse your attention across the present and the past and the future. So it just damaged that relationship we have with being in the now. Obviously, that's another video. I understand why we needed language, but that's what it did. Then text emboldened language and robbed us of all of the above, but it also robbed us of a lot more time. So it was eroding lots more natural human behavior. And it takes a lot of time to create text and a lot of time to learn how to read and write. The media that followed, radio and television, were an extension of language and an extension of text because they were broadcasting pieces of language to more people and tying up our physical hardware, our ears and eyes, so that you can't apply those to the environment around you. And also, increasingly, each of these media holds you apart from the origination of thought because each prescribes the meaning, whereas your decoding of reality is not like that. A lot of reality is ambiguous, and it's up to you to make out what you think of it for yourself. With these modes of communication, especially the ones that require labor for their creation, like text, radio and TV, they are usually commercial enterprises, so the message will in some way be trying to affect your behavior. But you don't get to interact with what you think is going on, and it's training you to be a much more passive consumer. I mean, even the idea of entertainment is implying that you need to be entertained. What did humans do before entertainment? They entertained themselves. It was a completely different concept. The next stage, just when you think you couldn't get more physically tied up by a medium, is the internet, which is the epitome of audacity because it has insinuated itself into our physical behavior, as well as just using your eyes and ears and all that. It's robbing us of our connection with people, our connection with reality. Social media claims to be socializing in a way. And now it is socializing. Pornography is increasingly replacing sex, if the statistics are right about the impact of porn on real sexual encounters. And I thought the next stage, which is virtual reality, would be the final slamming of the door onto the real world. But I was wrong because Elon Musk wants to just plug your brain straight into the matrix using wires or something. So He wants us to hand over that private space in our mind to the internet. I mean, this is utterly insane. This is the kind of thing David Icke was talking about 20 years ago, and people were saying he was a madman. But now those things are happening and we think they're a great idea. So to fight this, you need a practice that helps you take the reins of your own mind, and then you can tune into reality again. And that's what mindfulness meditation is about. You know, the media trains you to focus on abstract concepts to the exclusion of what exists in your local reality, whereas meditation trains you in the other direction so that you are only paying attention to what exists and what you can perceive immediately, and you're using those things as a mantra to steamroll over all the chit-chat in your head about abstract concepts that are not immediately present. The benefit of this is that it makes you a better decoder of reality. Like if you were a philosopher, you'd have a problem if you were prone to believing fake news and you got to drawn down rabbit holes and all that. To be a good philosopher, you need to go by first principles. What you can see definitely exists, and make your judgment on those things, or what seems to be real beyond reasonable doubt. Now, we are all philosophers trying to decode reality. So if you meditate, you become better at that because you're going by what definitely exists, and you get more self-awareness that way. One form of meditation is immersing yourself in your sensory perception so that you notice all the colors and sounds and physical things you perceive. That's mindfulness meditation. The other kind of meditation asks you to focus so much on your experience of being conscious that it's that you use as a steamroller to try and block out all the inner chattering as you concentrate on just your apprehension of the present moment. Both of these are the same thing. They're just different levels of the same thing. They're asking you to focus on what is definitely real to you, and they're asking you to exclude abstract thoughts that aren't real. And they've discovered that meditation over time reduces activity in areas of the brain that ruminate. The other way of countering the desire we feel for visibility is to, of course, change the structure and attitudes of society. And I think we just do that on an individual basis. We don't expect the rest of the world to follow, but they will. If you act as a good example of what you're doing and people see you being happy, they will follow your example. If people shun these corporatized ideas of status that don't mean anything and get their visibility through person-to-person human connection, that's what's going to turn things around. Of course, you'd be lucky if you happen to have a group of friends and family who weren't addicted to the television and the internet. So I think support groups are a good idea, one of many things you can do. Like, Alcoholics Anonymous. They do have meetings for internet addiction. Alcoholics Anonymous has also, Overeaters Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, love addiction. They've got groups for different things, and there are seemingly some for internet addiction, which seems weird because everyone in society is addicted to the internet. So it's actually might feel like a bit of a chore to go to one when you don't think you're any different to anyone else. But the reason I mention it is AA is just it's such an interesting blueprint for dealing with addiction. And it's like the original Jordan Peterson. It doesn't tell you the steps of how you're going to stop drinking or whatever, or using the internet for things that aren't necessary. It makes you acknowledge that you can't get over your problems alone. Other people are required so that they can help you, but also so that you can help them in turn. And it gives you the opportunity to serve. That's what keeps a lot of people in sobriety, the fact that they're needed by others. And the primary purpose, I think, of these therapy groups in relation to our various struggles is all they're doing is letting people see others and be seen. They're letting you hear other people's stories and have your stories heard. Nobody gives any advice to anyone particularly. It's just a structured way of getting connection with other people. And it can be quite removed. You don't have to interact with the people there if you don't want to particularly. You don't even have to say anything. But turning up means you probably will over time form connections with people and socialize and all that. Internet addiction, of course, is like food addiction. You can't give up food, but it's about giving up the abuse of the internet and its abuse of you. I'm also interested in AA in relation to our cultural problem of trying to get status, because the way it runs itself is a good example to the rest of us. You're not supposed to use its name when you're talking about it. You're not supposed to say AA. I'm just mentioning it because I think I'd like people to look it up and look up the 12 steps. But you're supposed to call it a 12-step program as though it's nothing special. And I wonder if that's because the founder recognized that if you get too invested in your own brand, if you're too, bigging up your name all the time, then if somebody threatens your brand and says, I tried it and it didn't work for me, you defend yourself. And then suddenly your focus is about upholding your image all the time and about keeping your brand looking good, when that shouldn't be your focus. It should be the integrity of the operation that is all you care about. Forget what people think of you. That is how we should be treating ourselves. We should be doing the things that we feel give us self-respect. Meditation is going to help with that, because it's going to teach us how to take life on our own terms and ignore what society thinks of us. It doesn't matter if people are saying that, the trend at the moment is to be a great bohemian painter. Why aren't you following your dream and being one of those? So I like this model that AA provides of just focusing on doing good locally and not worrying about anything else. Those two things, meditation and some plan, whatever it is, to meet up with like-minded people who also want to see and be seen. Those are my ideas for rejecting the current aims of the machine and getting back together as a powerful group. Because once we're together and able to tune into each other, the internet has no hope at all. Sorry for creating another media artifact, because I know that's hypocritical, but I've done it because I think using the media to convey a message that suggests moving away from it might be kind of justifiable. Share your thoughts below, and thanks for watching.